Wayne and Charmin. They were kind, they were generous.
There were no skeletons in their closet.
They enjoyed the farm life.
They can hear the people in their bedroom upstairs snoring. This was just boom, 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 and done.
It was big news. That's the kind of thing that doesn't happen very often in Nebraska.
Every time that it seemed like there was a progression, boom, here come the curveball.
Guilty of the crime is charged, count 1, tampering with physical evidence.
Nebraska, population 269. An hour from Omaha, this is America's heartland, where flag and faith shape its values.
Typical Midwestern, conservative, God-fearing, out in the middle of nowhere type of town.
Murdoch, Nebraska is your Norman Rockwell little town in the middle of hundreds of thousands of acres of corn.
Everybody knew everybody. These are the same people you're going to see at church on Sunday, the same people you'll see at the Bulldog Bar on a Saturday night, just enjoy a burger and a beer.
The simple rural life, until one Easter. Quiet at the farm this morning as Andy Stock arrives to start work with his father, Wayne. Almost too quiet.
Andy pulls into his parents' driveway, doesn't see his father around out in the yard. He also sees his father's truck parked. His mom's car is still parked. So he's becoming more perplexed by the situation.
The front door is wide open.
Andy heads inside, yells for his dad, yells for his mom. The house is silent. Andy thought that maybe his dad didn't hear him call or was distracted, was, just busy at the computer. He looks down the hallway and sees his father face down on the ground. He runs back outside, opens up his truck and grabs his phone and dials 911.
20 minutes later, the police arrive.
There was blood all over the hallway and then down the stairway. And on the walls, it was a scene of very bloody carnage.
58-year-old farmer Wayne Stock is laying in a pool of blood, shot in the head. Beside the bed, police make another gruesome discovery. Wayne's 55-year-old wife, Charmin.
Her body was pretty much hidden. One of the sheriff's deputies notices Charmin Stock's arm laying on the floor, wedged behind the bed. She had fallen to the ground after she was shot.
Cass County investigators call in a CSI unit from Omaha for help.
We were told that 2 people had been killed, that it was extremely bloody. This was an unusual scene for me. Dirt roads, miles and miles of farm fields. It was a very remote location. Very tidy farm setting. It had the typical Midwestern living room that is only used on Christmas and holidays. The kitchen is probably the center of most activity. But again, very clean, very orderly.
Unlike the chaotic scene, upstairs,
The investigators took us to the second floor bedroom. Wayne Stock had been shot in the head. There was a considerable amount of blood and almost a 180-degree arc around him, walls, floors, ceiling, which made it very difficult to travel around to the crime scene. Charmin Stock was behind the bed in the bedroom, and she had also been shot in the face. And that was also very, very brutal.
CSI's Dave Kofod and Don Vase pieced together Wayne and Charmin's horrific last moments.
It appeared as if someone had fired one shot at fairly close range and missed the victim. It shot through the bed and into the wall. Wayne Stock went into a defensive mode, but the problem was that he was wrapped up in bed sheets and wasn't able to adequately fight whoever was shooting at him. He began crawling through the doorway and trying to get to his guns. The next shot was shot in the back of his head.
Charmin grabs the phone to call for help as her husband is murdered right in front of her.
Charmin Stock, who was still on the telephone, was shot in the face. The obvious evidence that we found in the proximity of the bodies were shotgun shells on the floor, and these were deer slug shotgun shells. If you're going to load a shotgun with deer slugs with the intention of shooting somebody, you intend on killing them.
The blood-spattered scene tells investigators they're looking for more than one shooter.
We determined there were at least two people from the two different shots being fired from two different directions. Between the two assailants that were firing the shots, both would have had at least some blood on them, but the one that was in the hallway was actually sprayed with a considerable amount of blood, probably from head to toe. That blood, as it went out, made a perfect outline of the person that was standing out in the hallway.
The outline of a cold-blooded killer.
At first glance, this appeared very personal. The type of killing that had been done didn't resemble robbery.
Wayne's wallet was laying right on his desk, out in plain view.
The house had not been ransacked. Someone came in and went directly to the bedroom and killed them.
Something else makes Vase think this murder is personal.
They're traveling through a house in total darkness. And it's a house that has unusual twists and turns to it. They did that without waking them. They went up a stairway, down a hallway, and did that without waking them. They were either very, very lucky or just incredibly brilliant.
Outside, investigators discover the killers got in by cutting through a screen door. They left through the front door. And in the driveway, crucial evidence.
We found a marijuana pipe and a flashlight in the yard and the driveway.
My sister Vonna called me. She said, Kirk, you need to get out to Charmin and Wayne's as soon as you can. They've been murdered. Arriving out on the farm, I saw vans, police cars, crime scene tape. I'll never forget that feeling as long as I live, and I'm sitting there and I'm watching like they're still searching for whoever may have done this. That's when it hit me, and I can remember just going total loss of words, loss of thought, shock. It was overwhelming. This is the real deal.
Kirk saw his sister and brother-in-law just the day before.
Easter time was very important. Big gathering for the entire family. That's when everybody come together. Wayne and Charmin loved to be involved in their kids' and their grandkids' life.
The Stock family has farmed in Murdoch for generations. Wayne and Charmin were pillars of the community.
Charmin was a substitute teacher for many years. She very social, active in the church, in different communities. Wayne liked to hunt. He liked to fish. Help farmers when he could. They were so genuine. You got what you saw. They enjoyed the farm life.
I didn't see anybody.
The first stop for Nebraska investigators is son Andy.
My puppy here.
The night before Wayne and Charmin were shot, he dropped by to pick up his dog. In a small town where everyone knows everyone else, everyone knows the Stock family business is thriving, and Andy Stock stands to inherit the farm.
The first person to find the body and also the last person that sees the people alive are people that are looked at as possible suspects. And Andy clearly fit both categories.
He tells detectives he spent Easter with his wife's family and came by the farm around 10 to pick up his dog.
The Stocks were well off. Wayne's grandfather actually had started this alfalfa and hay business, and it did very well.
Maybe Andy got tired of waiting for the family fortune.
Thank you, guys.
As he talks to investigators, it becomes clear Andy Stock had nothing to do with his parents' murders. Within hours, he's eliminated. Two cold-blooded killers are out there somewhere, and Nebraska investigators are asking, why this couple?
You're talking about a farmhouse that is in the middle of nothing. Why would you go to this particular house? The only farmhouse that didn't have a dog. It didn't appear random at all. This was just boom, 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 and done.
On a lonely rural road, a husband and wife are found dead in their blood-spattered farmhouse, and the tiny town of Murdoch, Nebraska is in utter disbelief.
It was big news. Very brutal murder, small community, wonderful people. That's the kind of thing that doesn't happen very often in Nebraska.
Nobody in the community could believe that they were victims of foul play.
Investigators returned to the scene today, trying to piece together what happened. And while their investigation continues, many in the town of Murdoch are on edge.
Investigators go door to door looking for leads. 3 days after the killings, something promising. A couple delivering newspapers say they saw a car parked near the Stock farm around 4 a.m. on the night of the murders.
Seeing anyone at any time of the night is very unusual, let alone a car with someone parked in it, parked way off the road by a cemetery. It drew his attention considerably to this vehicle. And that vehicle was later seen by the same delivery guy speeding down a rural dirt road. And he recognized that this is very out of character for the area, especially on the night of Easter.
One of the newspaper carriers was able to see into the interior of the car. The witness seemed to think that the driver was a male, had a beard and dark hair.
The couple say the car was a tan four-door with a license plate starting with an O or a 0. Investigators turn to Wayne and Charmin's family.
The Cass County Police investigators come up to us, and it's like, does anybody know of any problems pre-existing with employees, with relationships, anything, or anybody that would have done this to Charmin and Wayne?
Only one name comes up. Matt Livers, Sharman Stock's 28-year-old nephew, the black sheep of the family.
The feeling was that Wayne and Matt had a strained relationship, and that Matt and his aunt Sharman had an even more strained relationship. There was even talk amongst the other family members that perhaps she was afraid of Matt.
Investigators learn Livers lives with Wayne's elderly parents. This didn't sit well with the family.
This situation caused immense tension for Wayne and Sharman. They thought that he had become a burden on his elderly grandmother and elderly grandfather. Matt seemed to kind of be a leech.
Rumors on the family grapevine were rampant. Livers wants to inherit his grandmother's house.
Matt had spent Easter Sunday with the Stocks. Matt got into an argument with Wayne and Sharman and had said something to the effect of, you know, over my dead body, are you going to get that house?
Investigators speculate Livers returned hours later in a tan Ford armed with a shotgun to do just that. The problem is, Matt Livers doesn't drive a tan-colored car.
The police didn't have a real specific description of the car. So they started thinking like, well, who would know Matt Livers and might have a car like that? Well, his cousin Nick Sampson's brother had a Ford Contour car that was of a brownish kind of color that fit that general description. So agents of the Nebraska State Patrol and the Cass County Sheriff's Department went to Lincoln, Nebraska and seized that vehicle.
At the Omaha Crime Lab, forensic experts combed the car for clues.
They spent over 6 hours analyzing the car. She took 47 different swatches and cuttings from the interior of the car. She swabbed all of the areas of the car that would be the usual areas that you would expect in a bloody crime scene.
Nothing is found.
The lead investigators were kind of stumped and baffled by this because they know how bloody this crime scene is. It doesn't make any sense that there wasn't any blood that was left behind.
Something else has the investigators stumped.
On the edge of a little piece of rug below the kitchen sink, one of the investigators found a man's ring.
It was a gold ring with a black letter inscription. It said, "Love always, Corey and Ryan."
There was blood found on it, so it had to have been either contacted after the shooting or had been up in that bedroom when the shooting occurred.
The family tells detectives they have no idea who owns that ring. So how did it end up on the Stocks kitchen floor with blood on it? The autopsies confirm the investigators' two-shooter theory. Wayne was shot in the leg and twice in the head with a 12-gauge shotgun. His wife Sharman was shot point-blank range, blowing away her lower jaw.
The manner of the victims had been killed. It did give the impression this was vengeance. There was something connecting these people together.
At the crime lab, some of the DNA results are back.
A flashlight had Wayne Stock's blood on it. It also had DNA on it from someone else. This was potentially the killer's DNA. You know, DNA is good, but it doesn't do you any good unless you know who it belongs to.
There hasn't been a murder in Murdock, Nebraska in over a century.
I looked at my family, and I've never seen a look of total devastation, confusion. You know, there's nothing you could do or say to help anyone.
More than 1,000 people packed the town's high school gymnasium for Wayne and Sharman's funeral.
That was a tough day. Everybody was still wondering how, what, and why it happened.
Undercover detectives mingle with the mourners to pick up any leads.
You never heard suspicion, but you saw suspicion. I wonder who is behind this. Could it be somebody in this building? Is it the person sitting out the end of that pew? Or is it the person out in the hall? Or are they long gone by now?
On April 25th, 8 days after the murders, Matt Livers is hauled in for questioning.
And I left with my fiance.
He adamantly denies that he has anything to do with their deaths.
Left after dinner.
He says this over and over.
That's it.
Livers claims he drove to his girlfriend's in nearby Lincoln after the Easter Sunday family get-together. He agrees to a polygraph and fails.
Yes or no?
Detectives turn up the heat.
Your subconscious body is telling the machine, you cannot fool it. I didn't have anything to do with this. You did. I did not. You did. I did not, Bill. You did. No, I did. I'm sorry. You did.
There was comments made to him along the lines of, I've been doing this 15 years as an investigator. I've never heard of anybody failing a polygraph as bad as you've just done here, bud.
We had dinner and...
I'm telling you right now, you don't admit to me exactly what you've done. I'm going to walk out that door and I'm going to do my level best to hang your ass from the highest tree. We'll put the olive branch out right now and attempt to help you, okay? Electric chair gas lethal injection. That's what kind of case this is.
After hours of intense interrogation, Matt Livers begins to break down.
You got a gun. Right or wrong?
Right.
And you took that gun back to your Uncle Wayne and Aunt Charlotte's house, right? Right or wrong? Come on, man.
Right. Put the gun to her face and blew it away.
Okay. And then as I headed out, I just stuck it to him and blew him away.
Livers changes his story again. He didn't act alone. His 22-year-old cousin, Nick Sampson, is the second shooter.
He's gonna finger Nick Sampson as being responsible for obtaining the 12-gauge shotgun.
After midnight.
Nick Sampson was also responsible for furnishing the getaway vehicle.
Matt Livers is arrested for murdering his aunt and uncle.
I learned about the arrest the night it happened. They said that he had made a confession. That's when it kind of hit home. It was like, wow, he admitted to doing it.
Next in the interrogation room is Matt's cousin, Nick Sampson.
Oh, I gotta just ask you flat out, why do you think you're here?
They think that I'm involved with the murders.
Like his cousin, Nick Sampson agrees to a polygraph and fails. But he refuses to confess. Afraid Sampson's a flight risk, investigators use an outstanding drug charge to keep him in custody.
I don't care who it was. I don't care if it's Matt and Nick. I don't care if it's Santa Claus or the Easter Bunny. If you had any association with it, we want you brought to justice.
In rural Nebraska, news that two men are in custody for the brutal shooting of their aunt and uncle 10 days earlier has all of Murdoch talking.
I heard about the nephew way ahead of time, as soon as it happened.
Well, I work with Nick, and I've known him since I moved here 4 years ago, and this is way out of character for him.
I don't think closure was even thought about at that time. There was still too much disbelief and shock, and we're still trying to come to grips with what actually happened. We're putting our faith in law enforcement, and that was our best hope.
No sooner are the murders of Wayne and Sharman Stock solved than the case starts to unravel. Despite Matt Livers' confession, Cass County investigators struggle to find forensic evidence linking him and his cousin, Nick Sampson, to the crime.
They seize Matt's clothing, shoes, bedding. They go through his entire residence, take what they want.
The search of Nick's house, his pickup, They grabbed anything and everything. They grabbed his shotgun, they grabbed his clothing, shoes, pants, anything they thought might have trace evidence of blood. Everything was all negative for any blood. Given the nature of this crime scene, it's inconceivable that somebody there would not have had blood spatter on them.
And then detectives hear something suspicious from Nick Sampson's own brother, Will. Information about his tan car. A car he often lends to his brother.
This is where things get really intriguing. Will tells them that on the morning of the murders, he had dropped off his vehicle at an auto detail shop for a cleaning.
It does raise suspicions when early in the morning, immediately following the murders, this car is being detailed. The detectives begin pursuing that line of investigation.
The detail work that was done on that car was not really very extensive. I mean, they pretty much just vacuumed it out and wiped it. And under those circumstances, that's not going to catch everything. However, nothing in the vacuum debris revealed the presence of blood, DNA, or anything of any usefulness in the investigation.
And despite the Murdoch rumor mill, Matt Livers has no clear reason to kill his aunt and uncle.
There was some reference to whether the motive could have been financially motivated, but Grandma has a will. There's no way that Matt could have benefited directly or even indirectly from Sharman's death, Wayne's death.
According to this sheet right here, you lied on the...
More bad news. Matt Livers recants his confession.
I mean, absolute truth is, I was never on the scene. I don't know if Nick is the actual person involved in this. I've been just making things up to satisfy you guys.
I suspect that the investigating officers believed that this was simply just another example of a killer who had made incriminating statements and then, having thought the better of it, decided that they wanted to muddy the waters by recanting the statement.
He confessed. Now he didn't. Every time that it seemed like there was a progression, boom, here come the curveball. I'm watching my family just reel through this whole thing. They want justice.
In a last-ditch attempt to save their case, investigators go back to the tan car. CSI Chief Dave Kofod, famous for finding evidence where others can't, goes over it with a fine-tooth comb.
Dave Kofod took a piece of filter paper and he ran it under the dashboard and then tested it. And when he did the chemical analysis, it showed the presence of blood.
After the blood DNA had been analyzed, it was found to have been blood from Wayne Stock.
At last, hard evidence tying the two cousins to the murder scene.
There was only one area of that car that appeared not to have been covered by Christine Gabig, and that appeared to be the area that was under the dash, under the steering wheel area of the car, which is where David Kofod found the blood.
Finally, a smoking gun. Matt Livers and Nick Sampson are looking at a potential death penalty.
We were so thankful because it's unacceptable for Sharman and Wayne to die in vain, and whoever done this has to be held accountable.
There's just one unresolved detail in the case against the cousins. The gold ring found on the Stock's kitchen floor with the inscription, "Love always, Corey and Ryan."
The ring had Wayne Stock's DNA from blood spatter on the outside of the ring and DNA on the inside from a female unknown. None of that suspect DNA matched any of the known suspects or any family members.
This was a real head-scratcher for law enforcement. They now knew that there was other people involved in this murder case.
The ring doesn't belong to Wayne or Sharman Stock or any of their friends. And it doesn't belong to murder suspects Livers or Sampson. Finding those other people means tracing that ring. After 4 weeks and more than 70 phone calls, CSI investigators zero in on a jeweler 1,100 miles away in Buffalo, New York.
She explains the situation, and here's the serial number. Can you do something? Is this traceable? They had spent the next couple days pouring through records. Ultimately comes back with a bullseye.
The ring was purchased at a Walmart in Beaver Dam, Wisconsin by a Corey Zastro as a gift for her boyfriend Ryan Krenz. 2 days before the Stock murders, the ring was reported stolen along with Ryan's pickup truck.
Well, I received a phone call from Nebraska authorities because there was a ring found at the crime scene in Murdoch. This ring actually belonged to the owner of the pickup truck that we already knew was stolen by Gregory Fester and Jessica Reed.
17-year-old Jessica Reed and boyfriend 19-year-old Greg Fester are already in custody in Wisconsin after a drug-fueled crime spree.
They were stealing vehicles. Besides that, they had also burglarized the home where they stole the truck from, taking a shotgun, ammunition.
Detectives take a DNA sample from Fester and Reed.
Tests came back proving that the ring and the marijuana pipe absolutely matched the DNA of Greg Fester and Jessica Reed.
Everyone was excited that we now have a connection to someone.
It's a sensational turn in the investigation. Detectives now believe 4 people, Livers, Sampson, Reed, and Fester, gunned down the Stocks. They find out all they can about the teens from Wisconsin.
Greg Fester grew up with law enforcement in his back pocket. Some of his criminal activity started when he was 10 or 11 years old. Drug cases, arson. His crimes became more daring and progressively worse as he got older. Jessica Reed was kind of the opposite, got good grades and made the honor roll. For some reason or another, rebels against her mother. She begins experimenting with drugs, and she and Greg Fester become romantically involved.
The drug avenue is what really hurt both of these kids. Both just seem typical going down the wrong path type kids.
Did the path lead all the way to cold-blooded murder? And how did Wisconsin's answer to Bonnie and Clyde hook up with 2 farm boys from Nebraska? In a dramatic twist, detectives investigating the double murder of a Nebraska farming couple now have 4 prime suspects.
Once you have a connection to a crime scene of this magnitude, the thinking changes completely. So now our focus is going to be some very intense and very direct questioning regarding the homicide itself.
First, 17-year-old Jessica Reed from Horicon, Wisconsin, is put under the spotlight.
I really want to know what Nebraska has to do with this, because I don't even think we entered Nebraska. I don't know what you're looking for. I don't know why I'm here.
The DNA evidence from the murder scene tells a different story.
All of the physical evidence was pointing toward the 2 from Wisconsin. DNA on the pipe, DNA on the ring that connected back toward the crime scene.
They were quite open about the thefts, admitted to it fully, and really not a big deal to them.
Investigators keep pushing. And Reed admits not only were she and Fester in Nebraska, but they were at the farmhouse.
Okay, I stole a whole bunch of money from somebody. Okay. I don't know who, I don't know where, I just remember stealing a whole bunch of money. And yes, we did lose that pipe when we stole this money.
Which one looks familiar, Jessica?
Next, Reed is shown photos of cousins Nick Sampson and Matt Livers.
Jessica started saying that yes, other people were involved. She was shown photographs and thought some looked vaguely familiar.
What about the other fellow?
Reed reveals that she and Fester got talking to Nick Sampson and another man outside the Bulldog Bar in Murdoch. It's a huge break for the Nebraska detectives.
Somebody comes up and makes a comment that, hey, do you want to follow us out to a farmhouse? We're going to go kill 2 people. He and Jessica decide to tag along, thinking that they could score some money out of it.
And we got to his house, and we got out of the truck, and it was dark out. It had to have been around like 10 or 11. And Fester handed me the 410, and he took the 12 gauge, and he said it was for protection because it was a farmhouse. And we were going in to rob the house.
Investigators then grilled Jessica Reed's partner in crime, Greg Fester. He confirms all 4 of them went to the stock farm with robbery in mind.
What the hell? Who is this? We wouldn't know these people if they fell out of the sky and landed on us. They've got the people. Now we've got more?
There's things that aren't making sense. Matt Livers made no mention of anybody else being involved in the crime except for Nick Sampson.
Things make even less sense when Jessica Reed changes her story. Now she says only her and boyfriend Fester went to the farmhouse on Easter Sunday.
And I know if I were you guys, I probably wouldn't believe me either. But I've really, honest to God, never seen Sampson or Livers before in my life. I have no idea who they are. They weren't there. I've never heard about them. I didn't know anything about other people being involved until these guys showed me pictures. And I thought that if I could point it off into some other people, that maybe they would just, forget about me and just kind of leave me alone. That's why I pointed out 2 people.
Trying to manage the information that's coming in from Jessica for what's true and what isn't true was very difficult.
To sort fact from fiction, investigators search Reed's apartment.
In that home was found a cigarette case with a shotgun shell and a note that she had left for Greg. And the shotgun shell was matched to what was being used down in a Nebraska homicide. When Gregory Fester was picked up, he had a shotgun shell in his pocket. It's their way of showing their love for each other by exchanging these shotgun shells.
Reed's note exposes the lovers' deadly pact.
And this bullet, well, buddy, it's the only thing left, and I loved it. But that's something we will talk about one day. But it's here also because that was something I did for you, me, and for you to love me as much as I love you.
Investigators also discover Jessica's journal. It seals their fate.
She confessed as far as her and Greg being there and killing this couple. Going into the house armed to pulling the trigger. Obviously, they're not there just to rob the house. They're there to kill.
Greg turned the bedroom light on. He turned around and he yelled, "Dime," and he shot his gun.
The forensic evidence linking Jessica and Greg to the murders of Wayne and Sharman Stock keeps piling up. The 12-gauge shell found at Jessica's apartment matches the one that killed Sharman. The .410 shell in Greg's pocket to the round that hit the bed. Inside the stolen pickup, investigators find traces of Wayne Stock's blood. Days later, Jessica Reed and Greg Fester are charged with the murders of Wayne and Sharman Stock.
2 very young adults.
And now we're wondering, how messy is this thing going to get? As we see 2 people, one confessed, implicated the other one. Now they have 2 more in jail. That's not sitting good.
The case against the Wisconsin teens looks airtight. However, the case against the cousins from Nebraska is evaporating. Liver's defense team questions his original confession.
It was obvious they hadn't conducted the interrogation properly. When you looked at the technique, the length of the interview process, the polygraph, his mentality, when you started adding up all of those specific issues, it became very apparent why he had said what he said. It's very clear by this point that we have a false confession.
I didn't have anything to do with this. You did. I did not. You did. I did not, Bill. You did. Oh, I did. I'm sorry. You did.
But if they had nothing to do with the murder, what about the blood evidence found in the car? There were rumblings it had been planted.
The allegation here is that Dave was doing a favor for the investigators by planting the evidence to solidify their case.
The allegation rocks the investigation and all of Nebraska. The murder of Wayne and Sharman Stock is far from case closed. Into their investigation, detectives' theory that 4 people killed Wayne and Sharman Stock collapses. In December of 2006, the DA rules that Matt Liver's original confession was coerced and false.
I made the decision after careful review of all the evidence in the case to date, meeting with the victim's family, and consulting with attorneys on my staff as well as with the Attorney General's office.
Unfortunately, it took this long to get here, but justice definitely has been served today.
It's not my intention to try and convict somebody that is not guilty.
Nick Sampson and Matt Livers are released from jail. And the final twist to this extraordinary small-town murder story.
Guilty of the crime is charged, count 1, tampering with physical evidence.
Celebrated Nebraska CSI Chief David Kofod is sent to jail for planting the blood evidence in the tan car. Evidence that came close to sending Livers and Sampson to death row. Kofod is appealing that decision.
Up until the discovery of the blood in Will's car, they have absolutely zero evidence to corroborate a single thing that Matt Livers has said.
The 2 cousins from Nebraska are off the hook. But the Wisconsin teens, Greg Fester and Jessica Reed, accept their fate. They plead guilty to second-degree murder, and on March 17, 2007, they're sentenced to 2 consecutive life sentences. Sometime after 10:30 p.m. on Easter Sunday 2006, Jessica Reed and Greg Fester arrive at the Stock farmhouse.
Initially, Jessica's story to me was that they were there to rob this house. Jessica stated they both carried shotguns into that house. They can hear the people in their bedroom upstairs snoring, yet within minutes of being in the house are up confronting them with shotguns and killing them. Obviously, they're not there just to rob the house. They're there to kill. And why? One possibility is a thrill kill. She was extremely excited, and there's an escalation here. It's almost like getting a fix, only it's a fix of almost an erotic nature. So we build up to the highest level that's possible, and it's a homicide.
As they run from the scene, the gold ring slips off Reed's finger, and they drop the marijuana pipe and flashlight in the driveway.
The ring was probably the most critical piece of evidence in the case. Well, if not for that ring, it's entirely possible, with the evidence in hand, that the nephews could have been convicted.
To this day, the conspiracy theories live on.
I think there was more people involved.
This is something that's bothered me right from the beginning. Was this truly a random act, or was there someone else involved?
I know that Fester and Reed did it. And all of the evidence connects them. I just have the feeling that there's a lot more involved. We'll never know the rest of the story.
There was no good reason for the taking of these 2 lives.
They were taken way too young. They got to miss out on things that everybody takes for granted. I mean, everything from birthday parties to bloody noses to baseball games to broken hearts. Their caring and generosity span the ages. That's how we'd like them remembered the most, I think.